Cowardice asks, the question, is it safe? Expediency asks, the question, is it politic? Vanity asks, the question, is it popular? But conscience asks, the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right.
Every time our country stands in the path of danger, an instinct seems to summon her finest first, those who truly understand her. When freedom shivers in the cold shadow of true peril, it's always the patriots who first hear the call. When loss of liberty is looming, as it is now, the siren sounds first in the hearts of freedom's vanguard.
Fighting for humanity and against globalism, one mind at a time. It's the Freedom Link with Joe Joseph.
Well. Here we are. We're live. We're live.
Wow.
It's 11th of January. Happy belated New Year, folks, for all of those that had celebrated or rued the day the New Year came. I don't know.
And a Merry Krampus to everyone
Krampus,
too.
Yeah, Merry Krampus, all that
and,
kind of crap. Okay, so holy shit, there's a lot of stuff that happened over the last few.
Wow. Okay, so last time we were on, I was just speaking to my mother about this. The last time we were on, they were still looking for Luigi. We didn't know who had committed the execution of the United Healthcare CEO.
Huge news.
Right.
Huge news, by the way. That was like, how do you put it? Like the what everybody feels but nobody says. It's kind of like the open secret, that kind of thing.
It was very interesting, and it definitely exposed and sort of brought to light and allowed for, I would say, everyone's sort of frustration and discontent with the sort of a healthcare system and insurance system, and it's very interesting to see the reaction to all of it. And there's a lot of people out there who feel who sympathize with Luigi, and remember when they were
in some way
yes. There's a level of people saying, I get it. You know what I mean?
Well,
they're like, I understand, and people know it's wrong, and of course, obviously, you don't go and execute somebody in cold blood. I mean, that's no, you don't do that. But there was.
I know
almost
exactly
like
what you mean.
It was a pressure valve for people's frustrations.
Yeah.
And you have
you can't condone murder, but at the same time, you connect with the guy in some way, shape, or form, because everybody has that experience of being denied. So there's a lot to go over tonight, and because it's a lot to go over tonight, we thought we should get some help. That's right. So we reached deep back in the tramp's pocket of the Freedom Link, and look at who we happen to find over there. Well, Johnny King has decided to grace us with his presence tonight. And I see Sasquatch is even joining us as well. So this is good. So we have Sasquatch and Johnny King all in one space. This is a treat.
Man, the myth, the legend, my friend. The last time I was on the show, Obama was president.
See, that's what I'm saying. So we have ourselves a lot to talk about, and believe me, so there's a lot of people that have gotten screwed over, Johnny King included. And so let's get started. First off, I think the biggest event that's happening right now currently is the fires in Los Angeles. And I'm interested to know, just we have seen for years the chemtrails. right? You look up, you've got plenty of documented cases. The Vietnam War was a great one where they went and they did what? The same thing that Saudi Arabia is doing right now. They are trying to seed the clouds, therefore make it rain, and they keep flooding themselves out because they're trying to figure out the science behind it. Why haven't they seeded the clouds over there and just let it deluge and just put it out? What's going on? We've got the technology. They're out of water. What do you do?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of questions. Why don't they just divert the water that they are dumping into the Pacific Ocean back down?
That's right. Hey, when you talk, Johnny,
way to make a 15-minute city is to erase what's there and rebuild.
Well, wait a minute. Now, how could you do something as historically significant as Los Angeles? I mean, how un-American would that be?
History don't mean jack to these people. Power and control.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Power and control. Power and control.
And
so,
you know, it's very interesting. A lot of the similarities that you see to Maui, right? And
no,
you know, it was just kind of like all of this, you know, the mismanagement, the no water, you know, a lot of things, you know, parallel the whole Maui situation. And so, I mean, there's a lot of weirdness when it comes to that. And definitely, I mean, look, you never let a good crisis go to waste, right?
No.
So, I mean, they're obviously gonna swoop in and take advantage of whatever they can out of this. And, you know, whenever they rebuild, I mean, what are they going to rebuild and who is going to be rebuilding there? And you got to wonder, boy, I bet BlackRock is just rubbing their hands together right now going, wow, look at all that Malibu property and look at all, you know.
Interestingly enough, you know, it seems like since 9/11, that's been the standard blueprint is, well, let's see. We need to redo the way this property is. You know, gosh, here we've got these two towers. They're white elephants. They've got this asbestos. The IT, the infrastructure's old. It all needs to be upgraded, and all these cost more than the building's worth. What am I gonna do? Let me just call the Mossad. Let me get the Bushes on the line. Hey guys, hey, you know what a good idea. I got a great idea. How about you help me out? I just insured my skyscrapers for terrorist attack by airplane, and why don't you come on down and take care of that for me? And sure enough, they do. And now he's got a brand new, nice, big, fat tower over there. Okay, all nice. Wrap it with a bow. So now you go over to Los Angeles, right? We've diverted the funds, whether intentionally or not, to other woke programs and everything else. And the forests aren't being maintained. The brush isn't being cleared when it needs to be cleared. And the electrical infrastructure is so old, you know, and there's so many different examples of
parts of the infrastructure. Their electrical infrastructure is like 100 years old. It was like built back when Edison, you know, and Edison and Tesla were first like creating the stuff, and
so
they're like, just leave it like it is.
Self-inflicted. This is all self-inflicted. So, you know, people are saying, well, it was done on purpose. Somebody did this. They lit it on purpose. Well, maybe there was an arsonist, or maybe, just maybe they said, well, you know, we know the risks involved of not cleaning up the forests and not maintaining all the brush and things like that. Plus, we understand the risks of not upgrading our infrastructure to protect it against things like EMPs or, you know, any sort of failure that would cause a heightened risk for fires. But we're willing to take that risk because, well, we'll never let a crisis go to waste, and we'll always rebuild better.
And they knew that those winds were coming, that they were going to have a severe, you know, unprecedented historical Santa Ana wind event with like gusts of over 100 miles an hour, and that's going to cause damage. And an event like that is going to create a fire. Something is going to break. Something is going to catch on fire, and there is going to be an emergency response, and something is going to have to be done. And when your mayor decides to completely ignore those warnings and go off and fly off to Africa and all, it just shows like it would be like knowing that a hurricane is about to slam into into
yo,
your
my God,
city.
my team's got it. My team's got it.
Right.
It's all good, right, Johnny? Her team's got it.
That's exactly right, Joe. You brought up a point a few minutes ago about them making it rain in Dubai, and I just want to cross-reference that with how convenient that these fires break out during these 100-mile-an-hour winds that
Yeah,
are coming in off of the Pacific.
yeah.
I mean, what better time to do this? But I got a message to the Californians out there that are devastated to this fire. Don't
Yeah.
worry, your $750 check will be in the mail from President Biden.
Yeah, right. And of course, Johnny here is talking about the North Carolina, the people that got blasted by that hurricane and are still living in
Right.
tents. Here it is in January, right? So,
Exactly.
and
Yeah, that's another thing I will, you see we really got this federal response and federal funding and everyone swooping in, when you still, have people in North Carolina
yeah,
and all of that ravaged area from Hurricane Helene that were pretty much abandoned and forgotten about. I'm not here to play, which disaster is more, than the other, because every loss is a tragedy. But I'm just saying, whenever you see sort of a lopsided response to one compared to the other, you got to wonder, well, why is that? And remember, you had a lot of those FEMA people caught directing their people
away from the Trump
away
supporters,
from Trump
yeah.
supporters and all of
Yeah.
that stuff. So
And that all proved out. That all proved out. Here's the interesting
yeah,
thing, right? It obviously it shows it's a breakdown in intelligence. That's the only way I could say. And I don't mean like intelligence,
oh yeah,
like warfare intelligence. I mean like,
no, yeah,
hello,
the incompetence
wow, wow.
of California's leadership is
I'm blown away.
staggering. It's
I'm
staggering.
absolutely blown away at how dysfunctional it's been. And here's the problem. If it's happened now, not once, it's happened twice. It's happened twice. So lessons weren't learned from Maui, which, by the way, has very similar weather characteristics to San Diego and Los Angeles, which
Right.
you get high winds from time to time, whether it be, seasonal hurricanes or typhoons or whatever, or this kind of high wind that comes in. Oh, hey, but the glass is half full, everybody. Our windmills made an exceptional amount of power. And I mean, I know, Johnny, you are a windmill connoisseur. So I know how much you love windmills. Could you imagine those windmills and what kind of power they were making when it's 100-mile-an-hour winds? Hey, Los Angeles is burning down, but boy, the wind's coming off that. Woo!
Oh, absolutely. Those windmills were burning down, making all kinds of power. Joe, how many times does it have to be coincidence to get you to think, well, maybe this isn't a coincidence? How many times does this go from incompetence
That's a bad word
to
here.
negligence? This is negligence.
Well, yeah,
We talked a moment ago about what happened in North Carolina. There are people now, their vouchers have ran out. They've been kicked out of their hotels and motels that are out on the
right.
street in one of the biggest winter storms so far this winter season. But they put all their money into the undocumented, I'll be politically correct here for once, undocumented people that have come in here. They're more important than us.
So let me help you out here for a second, okay? Immigration is a very important thing in the world of geopolitics these days. And unfortunately, because of the deliberate dumbing down of generations, the people that are making these decisions now really don't. They do what they're told. They're good. They're good soldiers. But really, it's a very, very small group of people up at the top that kind of really make things happen and thought that, well, wouldn't it be a grand idea to just open up our borders and bring all these people in? Because, if we take a look at China, whose population is collapsing, and Russia, whose population is collapsing, basically your entire first world, they're saying, well, no one would go for it anyway, so we're just going to cram as many in as we possibly can. Social safety net, budgets be damned, and then we'll deal with the problem when the dust settles, okay? Because Trump's going to come in. We know he's going to shut the border. That's fine, but we got 10 million people in, and by God, they're going to have kids, and we're going to outlast these other people, or that's what we want them to think. When in reality, that's not what's really happening. What they're doing is they need to collapse the United States. The United States is it. Whether or not it's doing the right thing or it's not doing the right thing, it's still the world's last best hope for ever trying to turn anything around. And now you've got a President Trump who comes in and his hands are tied right off the get-go because he's already up against the debt ceiling, can't raise that anymore. And if he does, he's got a hell of a fight on his hands. And you've got record high energy costs, dealing with multiple crises, and a totally and completely dysfunctional government. I mean, they left a mess and on purpose. And if you can't tell by the amount of sabotage that's going on in the last days, this is crazy.
Biden he's literally like running around wrecking the place before he
almost like a tantrum.
It's like it's like when a tenant gets evicted from their apartment and they just kick holes in the wall and just trash the place before they leave.
Yeah,
right?
Basically just having a temper tantrum. So here's the issue that you have, right? There's a lot of issues. You've just created an unbelievable amount of pain for the bottom 90% of the population. If you think about it, the bottom 90% of the population is suffering now more than it has probably since the mid-70s during the energy crisis. However, I would argue that they were much better off because healthcare didn't cost as much as it did. Energy didn't cost as much as it did, even with the energy crisis. You had a much lower cost of living, a much higher standard of living. That what we're facing today is basically the makings, Johnny King, of a great reset, perhaps?
Absolutely, and that's what this is all leading to. Joe, I think they should shut it all down. And excuse me, when Trump comes into office and they need to pass a budget, he should tell them, hell no, shut it all down, don't pay Congress, don't pay Senate, send in the Department of Government of Efficiency and wipe them all out. I mean, come on. When you're paying $250,000 to give freaking monkeys cocaine so they can see if they have better sex, something's wrong. Where's my cocaine? I'd like to have better sex.
And I didn't know that they were making porn videos in the government. I didn't think that was authorized. That's kind of like, well, it's insulting if you think about it. But even more so, it shows the annual largesse, if you will, of the dysfunctionality, the waste, the fraud, the abuse. It's been going on for generations. And they've artificially propped up the economy by printing a ton of money, which is why inflation bit us in the ass, and which is why it's biting us in the ass again. If you take a look at the numbers, if you trust the numbers, they are showing that inflation's picking up again. Why? Because Biden went and spent about 75% of the money, or appropriated it, before Trump even got office in January. So within 3 months or 4 months, he'll have spent almost 2/3 to 3/4 of what was appropriated. And that's insane. So what do? Well, one of the things that Trump just asked for was, yeah, we're going to need to raise the debt ceiling. We can't do that, and that's a problem.
Joe, they have no choice. What's on the books right now is $36 trillion on the deficit. And that's just what's on the books. What's promised that hasn't hit the books yet is $105 trillion. Go to the national debt clock and look at the numbers.
It's ridiculous.
It'll tell you what it is.
It's ridiculous. Oh, look at that. Now that's nice. Okay, I gotta mute you because you just kind of. I'm gonna wait for your signal to settle out. But he's right.
Yes.
You have to do that. Now you can cut, but you're gonna have to cut. You're gonna have to cut deep. If you don't raise that debt ceiling, you think about that. Now you got to live within your means, and instantaneously, you have how many bases in how many countries? I think 900 bases in over 170 countries. Okay. That needs to be wound down. See, none of this stuff is an overnight thing.
Right. I mean, they have to really start downscaling everything that because we are stretched so far, and like you said, I mean, the amount of bases we have surrounding, all over the world and all of that, and we don't need them there. And I know people are like, but national, security and all of that. And no, it's not as with the technology we have and the capabilities we have. We do not need to have that much manpower stretched across the globe and all of these bases all over the place. We need to start winding that down and streamlining our forces, right? Isn't that the whole point, is to be as efficient and as streamlined as possible, if you're for a military and all of that, but I don't know, what do I know? I'm
Scott, that's going to be awfully hard to do, since the current administration has spent the last 4 years telling boys that they can cut off their penis and wear a dress, and effeminate men, and indoctrinate the DEI, which is spelled wrong. I think it should be spelled DIE, because we're dying as a country, and putting these people into our military.
Hey, I'm so glad you brought that up. Hold on.
Boot camp, if they can't handle it, they hold up their little card and they go to their safe space.
Well, Zuckerberg himself has now come out and said himself that most companies need much more masculine energy. Now, for somebody like Zuckerberg to say that, it's got to make you scratch your head, because now
Zuckerberg's been doing a 180, because
here's a guy, right? Yeah, here's a guy that has been basically in the pocket of the U.S. government and has openly admitted it, to the point where he says, "Man, they're bullying us. If we have something on there that they don't like, well, they yell and they scream and they kick and they spit until we take it down." And well, now the real truth is, now we see that Musk just totally freaking hit us upside the head with a nail bat with his community guidelines and his community comments, that we have no choice but to do that, because he's growing like crazy, regardless of what the mainstream media tells you or anything else. X is the place to be, whether you like it or not. And the things that he's doing is moving it in the right direction, whether you like it or not.
Elon completely destroyed the whole fact checker thing, right? Because obviously these fact checkers were not unbiased, and they were obviously political, and taking down posts and quote unquote fact checking posts that they deemed politically inconvenient for their side. And once Elon introduced the whole concept of community notes and where it's pretty much crowdsourced and open sourced fact checking, where you're not having these ministry of truth, right? Arbiters of truth, what do they call, authoritative sources, being the ones to be the final say on what is truth and what's not. That's so Orwellian, and everybody saw it for what it is. And now that whole paradigm has been destroyed. Elon changed that, and Zuckerberg realizes, well, crap, this is the new way that people are actually really fact checking, right? Because community notes and that's real fact checking, because if you're wrong, you're going to get called out for it, and
I got to bring this up. This is, well, okay. So you see that, right?
Okay.
And he's absolutely right in that eventually we're going to migrate to that. We have a society now where we are migrating to a technocracy or whatever, right? So with that, one of the things that I talked about in 2016 when I put out that documentary called Obsolete with Aaron and Melissa Dykes was,
right,
what do you do when human labor and money become obsolete? What do you do? You've got to have a migration plan, because it's coming, whether you like it or not. You could say what you want about Musk, but one of the things that
and
he
look, if
doesn't,
it's not
Musk, it's going to be someone else.
It's going to be someone else. So
Right.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter, yeah, you can not like the guy and whatever, but
We have to
that's the
breach that
direction. That is the direction we're
question.
headed,
Okay, so
regardless. Yeah.
this is how it goes. You can either do it in a way that benefits society, that benefits everyone, or you can do it in such a way that it benefits no one, and it ends up causing destruction. It ends up causing pain, depopulation, whatever the hell you want to call it. You've got to do it right. And the only way to do it, in my humble opinion, is getting the smartest people together and trying to figure out how you do it. Because you could do it in such a way that, oh, well, now whenever you get hungry, food's available. Whenever you need clothes are available. We have the technology now. Hell, like a replicator or whatever. It's getting to that point. And if Sam Altman is correct and he has AGI this year, holy shit. I mean, that's a game changer.
And if we're not doing it, guess who else is going to? Guess who else?
China,
China's going to do it.
Russia,
anybody. And yeah, so yeah, I mean, that's you might not like it, but it's just a hard reality that people have to accept. Unfortunately,
Johnny King, go ahead.
I'm just wondering, guys, as you're sitting here talking about this, and something just flashed into my head. Could these robots and these AGI and advanced artificial intelligence, could this be what they're talking about in Revelation when they talk about the image of the beast?
I don't know. I think it's more of people have an idea that the Antichrist is a person, and it's not. Hold on one second. It's not a person. It's a power. And the other thing that you have to understand is that anti doesn't mean opposite of. It means in place of. The correct translation. So if you think about this, AGI, the answer to all of our problems. Ask the AGI, and it will give you your answer. It will give you your cure. It will provide the technology or the way forward to be able to solve complex problems. It will do all of that for you.
Right.
Now,
think about it, right? The artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to find new cures that man had never found before. It'll be like a miracle, right? It's going to solve all of these problems and do all of these things that are going to be seen as miraculous that humans could never achieve. And so you will have people looking at artificial intelligence, almost like the second coming of a great thing. And you already have these weird kind of techno cults that are already forming, that already kind of see this as like we're gonna worship AI. This is the new,
there's that. It's like really freaky, like an effed up Brave New World thing. I don't know. I don't get it. But I can tell you that Musk at least has a track record of using science, being systematic in his approach, and he's seen different corporations utilizing cutting edge technology along to where they were good companies, being very successful. So I'm not, if I was to say, would I rather the government handle that, even though they already have it? Hello, Buffdale, Utah. It's been in operation for a long time. Or would I rather Musk handle it, and kind of make it a team effort, that kind of thing? I don't know, but I can tell you that
would you rather have?
I trust Musk over the government. No, look at the track records.
Right.
Just look at it's like a resume, right, dudes? That's the way it is. What other choice do you have? I don't know. That's the problem.
Well, you could always have Bill Gates, right?
No, we don't want Bill Gates. Johnny wants Bill Gates. Johnny loves Bill Gates.
Oh, my Lord and Savior, Bill Gates. Give me the vaccine.
Yep. Now, I will tell you that they're gonna make a lot of promises over this technology. And like I say, if it's done right, perfect. The problem is there's also a track record out there of people that don't want humanity to be freed, that want to keep us under their thumbs, and are doing everything they can to do so. Think about this just for a second. And we have an issue now where housing's unaffordable. Do you think that was done on purpose? I think it was done on purpose. I think it was most certainly done on purpose. Cause a crisis, right? Now, I don't know how in the grand scheme of things, like the Bilderbergs and all that, I don't know how much Musk is involved in that, if at all. But I can tell you that he's not driven by those same forces, although he may have other plans that may not be ours, like going to Mars and colonizing it and crap like that, when, we could probably put those resources to better use at the moment.
Everybody has their own goals and agendas.
Everybody does.
Things
yep.
Yeah, so, I mean...
It's not always a conspiracy on the surface, or people going into it like that. It's just kind of like, I'm going to take care of this. And when the opportunity presents itself. And that's kind of what he does. He's a problem solver, and whatever, I could tell you this, though. I don't know one billionaire that got $1 billion by being Mr. Nice Guy. That much I will say,
Right.
That's
the
thing.
That's a cutthroat business, and you've got to be cutthroat in order to get where you're at,
And the other thing, too, out of all the billionaires out there, he's the only one presenting solutions to these problems. Like, for example, Boxable. Boxable is the prefabbed houses that go up in a day that, if you take a look, they're actually pretty cool. It's kind of like taking a container and folding it down, and then when you need it, boop, 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 it's up, it's done. All the services are already put into it. Basically a prefabbed house that can go into mass production. You mass produce it. You bring the cost of housing down. No one else is coming out with any freaking ideas. Here's a guy that's doing it. And he's just taking the bulls by the horns because he's got billions of dollars, which is what you would do, or I would do, or anybody would do if they had billions of dollars, at least as far as I know. That's the thing, is that it's hard to put yourself in that position.
He has no problem. He has no problem throwing money at trying to solve problems, I guess.
That's it.
Is what you can say.
That's right. Go ahead, Johnny.
Guys, we can throw these numbers out at people, and they hear it all the time, and they might not understand how much we're talking about. $1 million is 1,000,000. $1 billion is 1,000 million. $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. When we say the deficit is at a 36 trillion, that's
Yeah, it's
astronomical.
like it's
When
asinine.
somebody's a
It's just
billionaire, they have money falling out their ass.
if you remember, um, I think it was the last show we did a piece on that, which was how hard it is to spend $1 trillion. Like
Right.
it's insanely difficult, unless of course you again have such a huge footprint all over the world and are trying to control it all. But we're broke, and unless we do something different and change our course, we're in big trouble. I think we're already in big trouble. I think we've jumped off the cliff and we're pulling our parachute cord and we're hoping it works and the ground's coming fast. So uh, there's going to be a lot of pain. It's almost akin, I think, to Argentina in a way. There you got Malay that comes in.
I was just about to say it's going to take
Decades
an Argentina level complete
intervention.
restructuring intervention, and yeah, if that's a painful, you have to rip the Band-Aid off and
it's not good
and get it over with. But it's going to hurt in the short term. But you got to do it. You have
Let's
to
put it in
do
perspective. Put it in perspective. I don't think Americans understand what that means.
No, they don't.
Because we've been so outside of that for so long. We've been living in a debt-fueled economy for decades upon decades. So
they've kicked the can down the road for so long that people forgot. Like actually,
but I mean, the level of squalor, the level of squalor, the level of dysfunctionality, the how far society can degrade, if not collapse, when that amount of pressure is put on people, when their livelihoods are threatened to the point where they may not have shelter. Oh, and by the way, because of city codes and all that stuff, you can't live in a shelter or a mini home or a camper or an 8-foot box. You can't do that. Well, where do you go? What choices do you have? And it's like Kennedy said, when you make peaceful protest impossible, you make violent revolution inevitable. It's going to happen if they don't pull their head out of their ass and do it right. Problem is you got to have Congress play ball. And there's too much dysfunctionality right now in Congress for there really to get anything meaningful done. So that's where I have a big issue, and everybody is suffering. Now, on the other side of things, when the Soviet Union collapsed, one of the first signs of that pre-collapse was shortages. There were shortages of goods and services. And, I remember being on TV and seeing all the grocery stores just totally emptied out. Now, we're not at that point now. But one place that I'm seeing it, and millions of people are suffering with pain, whether it's physical, whether it's mental, whether it's emotional, or whatever kind of pain you have. It's a severe epidemic in this country. Drugs went and entered into agreements with these distribution companies that send medicine to all the pharmacies out there, and each pharmacy has an allocated amount that they can draw of things, anything controlled, like for example Adderall. You'll probably notice a lot of people with ADHD are having tremendous difficulty getting their medicine, having to bounce around from place to place to try to get medicine, only to fail miserably. Meanwhile, their loved ones or even themselves are forced into withdrawal time and time again, month after month. And it's absolutely cruel. It is a crime against humanity, in my humble opinion, for a first world country to allow pain to get to this level, all in the name of the illegal drugs that get shipped over our border and kill thousands upon thousands of people every year. These people didn't do anything wrong. The only thing they did was get hurt and can't recover through no fault of their own. And it's wrong. We don't treat prisoners of war that way, but we treat our own citizens that way. And
it's very similar to punishing all gun owners for
same idea.
A gun crime.
It's prohibition.
Right? So yeah, it's prohibition, and so you're going to punish people who legitimately need the medication because of the fact that you're allowing fentanyl from China to be flooded into the country. So,
and then it makes criminal element.
yeah.
Because let me tell you
Right.
something, folks. The DEA is not going after cartels. They don't give a shit about cartels. Cartels are too dangerous. They don't want to get involved with cartels. So what you have to do, and if you're not familiar with this, in government, you have a structure where you're evaluated on your key performance indicators. They're called KPIs. And at the beginning of the year, you sit down with your supervisor and you pound out what your KPIs are going to be. And then you're measured against it when it comes evaluation time to see if you warrant a raise or a bonus or whatever, which in government, a lot of people make a lot of hype over how much civil servants get paid, but really, on average, you make more in the private sector. The nice thing about the cushy government jobs are the fact that it's pretty safe. You're not going to get laid off, and government shutdowns rarely happen. But these key performance indicators are very, very important if you have a competitive spirit, because upward mobility in government is not good at all. It's very hard to advance. And there's a whole political aspect of it. There's patriarchy. There's all sorts of things that go into that, right? The DEA likes getting their KPIs or fulfilling their KPIs by going after the helpless and the innocent. Why? Because they're easy targets. If you take away the medicine from the pharmaceutical companies to give to these patients that are in a terrible state, that are suffering, that cannot get their mobility back or functionality back without pain relief, then what happens is you have a criminal element you're creating because they're slammed into withdrawal, or perhaps they feel like their brain, they're having an outer body experience because they can't get their medicine for their mental deficiencies, and they go to the street. A, you get something that's not safe, but B, you create an entire criminal element that you can then go cherry pick from as far as who you're going to frickin' harass and who you're going to make life even more miserable for. And
Right.
it's a perpetuating cycle. It's an engine that just eats us alive.
Yeah, and when you talk about these KPIs and stuff, I've heard about this too, and someone I've watched on on YouTube and stuff, Asmongold. So shout out Asmongold. He talks about how these government workers and people, they're essentially they're playing the job like they're playing a game, right? They're trying to min max their
That's right.
Yeah, they're playing. It's just like if you're playing a video game and you're trying to min max your. So yeah, in order to get
or farming
those bonuses,
for a special item or something like
yeah,
that.
Yeah.
You're farming. You're farming an area. You're farming.
Yes, they're gaining it, and they're not. They don't care what the collateral damage is and who's affected by it or whatever. They're just trying to boost those numbers. Bigger number better, bigger number better, right? And that's all they're trying to do. And like you said, they're just trying to work their way up the pole in the government, bureaucracy chain, and that's how they do it. And they don't care about the pain and suffering that they cause to the people, and so. Yeah, it's
Nope, they don't. And so here I'm going to bring it up, right? Okay. So, and absolutely, I want to bring this up too. Mr. Ponzi, you're absolutely right. Same shit happens in the private sector, and it's cutthroat and it's bullshit, and we all go through it. The ones that are in the private sector, same thing. I've had the pleasure of doing it both for the federal government and in the private sector, and it is just ugh. Makes you feel dirty. Anyway, Luigi Mangione, his one that also had his life basically taken from him. Why? Deny, delay, defend. We've all been through it. You pay an unbelievable amount of money to these insurance companies for your insurance premiums, only to be shot down when your doctor, who evaluates you, who knows you better than any insurance evaluator out there, he gets a letter back, you get a letter back that says, yeah, so Billy Madison, the guy that just graduated from East Cupcake University, yeah, he says that that's not medically necessary, and you should try this medicine, and this medicine first before you do that, because it's like it's cheaper. And or you could be like my wife, who is bedridden and can't get out of bed and has been medically undertreated for years because of the war on drugs and has seen her life stolen from her. And even this month, go to Walgreens, actually go to her first pharmacy, right? Yeah, we can't fill that. Okay, great. And then you start going pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy. And then when you do that, guess what? Oh, you're pharmacy shopping. Why are you pharmacy shopping? And it's this thing where you just have absolutely no dignity, no rights, no nothing. Now, on top of that, you can't even get the medicine even if you want to. So we have a serious situation here. Now, with Luigi, you can say what you want. You can love the guy for what he did. You can hate the guy for what he did. But we all connect with what was in that mind of his that day. Some way, somehow, either through personal experience or the experience of loved ones or friends or family, you know somebody out there that's gotten shafted and screwed over by the insurance companies. You do. Or been told that you can't get that kind of medicine anymore. You can't have that anymore. I'll tell you what, let me give you an example, right? One of the best things for lower back pain or any sort of muscular pain are lidocaine patches, right? They even sell them in grocery stores and over the counter now at Walmart. You can go get a lidocaine patch. If you're not familiar with lidocaine patches, it's the same crap that they put in sunburn gel that makes the skin numb so that you don't feel the burn so much, right? Well, go to your doctor, anybody that has back pain or anything like that, and request that you get a prescription for lidocaine patches. The 5%. See, the over the counters are 4%. There's a big difference between 5% and 4%, I come to find out. You won't get it approved. Now, it is hands down the best non-opioid treatment for anything like that out there. Works like a champ. But you can't get it. You can't get it. I think there's only a few ailments that they actually approve it for. I think one's diabetes and a certain thing with diabetes, you know? But for anything prescribed for that, unbelievable, you know? And I'm not even talking about all the holistic stuff, you know, right, which is a whole other ball of wax. I'm just talking about if you don't want to go, you can't get painkillers, even if you wanted them. Tylenol's not working for you, but you want to maintain your productivity, and you can't really afford to go and buy cannabis oil all the time or a chocolate bar or anything like that. It's pretty cost effective if you just got to pay a copay or 20% to get like 30 days worth of these patches. But you think they're made of gold. And it's unbelievable. Crazy. You know, I just don't get it. I don't get it. So we're in shambles, and a lot of people are. A lot of people are. I didn't understand or know that, Johnny King, until I dealt with it myself. And until you actually have to be a caregiver for someone who is struggling or suffering in that way, you just really, or you're suffering with it yourself, you just really can't understand what they go through from month to month. And it shouldn't be happening in this country. Go ahead.
Joe, my wife took sick. She decided to go to the doctor, so I took her. And right away, the pill mill started. To make a very long story short, he put her on 6 different medications. We went to the pharmacy. We got her medications. They were very cheap for the first month. Not a problem. The second month came around for her to get her refills. It was going to be over $1,000 a month, every month. When we went back to the doctor, I told the doctor that is not sustainable.
Right.
And he explained to me that is the best medication I can prescribe to her. And I told him, point blank. I said, well, that may be the best medication that you could prescribe to her, but it comes down to whether I can pay my mortgage, put food on the table, keep my lights on, or put your pills down her throat. So if you want her to have medication for what ails her, prescribe her the second best. He
Right.
did. Do you know what my monthly prescription is for her for
For the
all six
second best.
days?
Oh, go ahead. What is
The
it? What
second
is it?
best? Less than $60 a month.
Which is what people are looking for. And when they go, that's what you would expect, right? That's what you think, oh man, these premiums that I'm spending on this health insurance, well, it's got to be good for something, right? I mean, after all, who likes having hundreds and hundreds of dollars stolen from them every pay period out of their check, right? Because that's how I feel. I'll be quite honest with you. I feel effing like ass raped every time I have to go to a doctor just so the insurance company can come back, or I bring my wife and get that letter in the mail that says, oh, well, we need that pre-authorization first. Pre-authorization what? What the hell did my doctor go to med school for? What the hell are you doing? And then you come and find out, oh, yes, well, the quarterly profit for United Healthcare Alliance is $60 billion. What? And so let's talk about that, because that's another bone of contention I have. And unfortunately, there's really no good workaround here. So once you made medicine for profit and it became publicly traded, it became part of people's retirement portfolios. Same thing with the military industrial complex. People started to invest 401ks. People's retirements are now tied to just how greedy and just how effective these corporations are at milking us clean, milking us dry. I hate to say it, but that's really what it all boils down to. Our system is set up this way. And the problem is, unless we come together, we're always going to come back to money being the root of all of this that we're suffering right now. Everything boils down to money. And at least some facet, it's money. And we don't have any money. Nobody has any money. This country's broke. And those that do have money are hoarding it. It's all the money. So what do you do when you need help and you can't get it? Are you surprised that Luigi did what he did? I'm not surprised. And no one should be surprised. As a matter of fact, I'm surprised it took that long for it to happen. Do I condone it? Absolutely not. But one thing I will tell you is that there are a lot more people out there that have been affected by the same things and situations that he suffered, that are out there.
Right.
Just,
I mean, Luigi is just a manifestation of everyone's frustration.
That's it.
And it boiled over, and this is what happened.
No different than the gent that blew up the Tesla in front of the Trump Hotel. He's a manifestation of years and years and years of illegal wars and all this money and human capital being thrown down the toilet when we could have given everybody a goddamn house for the amount of money we spent in Afghanistan or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. We are a country with so many resources and unbelievable potential. But if we don't do something soon, and I mean very soon, we're screwed. And I don't know how to solve it without there being a Malay-style course correction in this country. I just don't. It's really crazy. Now, I will tell you also that delay, deny, defend has gotten so bad that people are actually writing books about this, begging to have the insurance industry fixed. A guy by the name of Jay Feynman wrote a book called Delay, Deny, Defend. And interestingly enough, he gets into why insurance companies don't pay the claims and what you can do about it. So he kind of wrote this thing to kind of get you around it. And it says, the unsettling echo of the book's title struck him once he kind of looked at it. And he says, that killing and the torrent of online outrage that followed put Americans' unhappiness with health insurers at the forefront of the national conversation. Many responded by mourning Thompson, but by blaming United Healthcare and other insurers for failing to pay for essential medical treatments. And then gleeful online trolls, he says, even celebrated the alleged killer as a heroic vigilante, which, again, I can understand it. I may not agree with it, but I understand it. He says, I think a few people should be surprised by this ghoulish reaction. The killing revealed the resentment and even rage many Americans feel towards health insurance companies. And while the focus has been on health insurance, these frustrations extend across the broader insurance landscape. So it's not just that. What have these fires shown us? The absolute frustration that people feel because government regulators came in, and they dictated what insurance companies can charge, probably well-intentioned, but they pulled back, and now a lot of people couldn't renew their policy this year. So those people who had their houses burned down lost everything. How are they going to be? Here's a question. I'm going to pose it to you guys. Even though we're broke, should the government bail out the homeowners and the businesses? What do you think? That's a toughie,
that's a tough one, because on one hand, it was government and their lack of management that created the conditions for their houses to burn down.
So you could say then that there was a level of culpability on behalf of the state.
Yes.
Would it be the state or the Fed?
I would say the state. I would say that the culpability would be on the state of California for not managing and clearing the brush out and doing proper management and maintaining their infrastructure, which allowed for the fire hydrants to be dry I would say that the state is culpable in this. So they would be the ones responsible for taking care of these homeowners. That's my answer.
Yeah, I don't know what the right answer is. All I know is that there's going to be a lot of people that, let's just say they decide to sue the government, like a class action or something like that, where they say, state of California, you didn't hold these companies accountable, or you didn't do this or that. I don't know how far you would get. And I'll bet you it would take the better part of 10 years to fight it through the court system. So even if that was the case, and I mean, look at North Carolina. They got $750, but they had to apply for it and then meet certain criteria to get it.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was for $750. So, when it comes to government, you can't really trust it for anything anymore.
Right. I mean,
and I think people's frustration, there's a validity to it that isn't necessarily easy to solve. Because look at what happens, right?
The problem is that in order to hold the system accountable, you have to go through the system.
I know, it's really
and that's
weird.
The problem.
It's really
right.
Weird.
So you're it's like telling the criminal to investigate himself. We're going
to do an independent investigation. You see,
we have to fix the broken system by going through the broken system. You're running in circles, and
that's the problem you run
ridiculous.
into, and that's why I left government. I'll be honest with you. Well, I left government because when you blow the whistle on shit, they take your security clearance away. But outside of that, one of the reasons why I wanted to get out was the fact that, hey, you know what? I can't be party to this dysfunctionality, to this waste. I can't put my support behind these illegal wars and the things that are going on.
And this is what happens when you have the slow rise of a bureaucratic, just Goliath.
It just
Leviathan.
eats itself alive. It eats itself from the inside out.
Right, and it just ends up rotting from the inside out and becoming this bloated beast of ridiculousness. And you have these unelected bureaucrats that think that they're above the law and that they have all this authority when they don't. And you see it, and it happens in all of these governments that just blow up and get out of it. You see it in it doesn't matter if it's a capitalist government or if it's a communist government or whatever. I mean, you've seen it in Soviet Russia, the bloated bureaucracy that just the weight of it all collapsed on itself in the very end.
Karen Bass, the mayor of Los Angeles, right? She gets off the plane. She goes to the news conference. She's so unprepared, right?
Right.
Because she's not connected to this. She doesn't care.
No,
she just wanted her name on the plaque on the desk. That's the only thing she was interested in. She's not a problem solver. She's none of that, dude. She's just a freaking automaton doing what she's told when she's told to do it.
A cog in the wheel of the system.
That's all it is. And then you get a nice little mansion for doing your job, right? That's what you get. You get to live and not worry about that part.
You're
of your life.
a nice little commissar, and you get to.
But she comes back and she's reading from these cards, dude, and literally she's doing the Biden thing, where it's like, okay, and if you want more information, please check out the website at URL.
Right? Yeah, she can't even read a teleprompter or
no, because
correctly.
You can't say calfire.com or .gov or whatever it is. That's the ineptitude. If there was, you got to be observant at this stuff when they talk and all that, because it shows their ineptitude. It shows that all of you listening out there tonight are infinitely more smart than these control freak bureaucrats. The ones that the strings are pulled, the puppets, if you will. You are infinitely more smart and capable of solving the problems that affect us. But you want to know why we're all listening and doing this and not in those places? A, because we're not part of that club. And B, because those with honor tend to shy and stay away from the pit of vipers. That's Mordor on the Potomac, or LA City Hall, or anywhere where these frickin' control freaks, they are. We tend to go and say, shit, man, I wish I could get my hands on an Atlas missile silo so I could go ahead and live there and disappear. Don't want to be part of this. Don't want to be part of the destruction.
We got plenty of those here in Kansas, Joe. If you're looking for some property, we got some silos here in Kansas. Yeah.
I just watched something on YouTube on that, by the way. So there's a survival company out there that actually does. They redo them. They redo these missile silos and they turn them into shelters. Dude, they are freaking badass. I mean, they are nice. But you better have a million bones.
Right. I would say I would love to have the money to buy one. I would never have to worry about an F5 tornado ever again in Kansas. So, but it's crazy. And from, I don't know, I'm gonna have to look into this, but from what I've heard, our mayor of LA has quite the communist revolutionary past from the 1970s. And,
say it ain't so.
Like I said, I'm gonna have to look into this.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. So because we're seeing what we're seeing right now, I thought, and all the pain that people are feeling, right? Doge is going to try to recommend certain things. Trump is going to go in and he's going to get blocked and he's going to get filibustered and a whole heap of things. He's not going to be able to get what he thinks he's going to get done. We all know that story and how it's going to play out. It's going to be a hell of a fight. And it's all meant to be that way. So I want to take a moment and just go through history right now, like I do from time to time, about what the control freaks of the past have said about this very day and what the plan is. And let's just see how far we've gotten. You know, everybody knows what they see and they know. So I'm going to pull it up now and we're going to go through some of these quotes. And I think you're going to come to find out that this has been the plan all along. So let's take a look and see what we can see here. And this is a history of the New World Order. It's done by, they call it Michael Journal. Now, Michael Journal is basically a sect of Catholic patriots that are out there kind of pushing for the real truth to come in. And what they want is they're the ones that are trying right now to start a conversation. They started 20 years ago. What do we do when this monetary system no longer benefits the whole? We got to start having that conversation, right? That's what they've said. And you say what you want about Catholicism or religion or anything else, but I can tell you, folks, don't go into any conversation with anybody with that kind of divisive mindset going into it. Oh, you're a Catholic, you're a Democrat. No. We're human beings and we can talk and we can debate and we can do so in a civilized manner like we used to be able to. These guys put together one of the best timelines I have ever seen. And I want to bring up this one in particular because this one really, really is central to where we are now. So Mayor Amschel Rothschild wants to start his little clan called the Illuminati, his little cabal, if you will. And he goes after Adam Weishaupt, who was the professor of canon law in Bavaria at the University of Ingolstadt. And he's basically tasked with, okay, we need to make a charter for this new club that we have called the Illuminati. We want to put together basically what is our goals? What are we kind of shooting for here? So Adam Weishaupt comes up with the 7 goals of the Illuminati. And right here they're listed. Abolition of all ordered governments, meaning let's get this all under one control system, one global control system.
Yeah, your good old global government.
And you kind of see that coming together now because basically all of your first world countries, even your second and third world countries, are drowning in debt. Basically, if you were to...
Well, we're all tied into the global economy.
And we're all tied together, right?
Yeah.
So any one situation can really cause catastrophe somewhere else, if not affect the whole globe, right? So we see that that's taken and made plenty of progress. Now, it gets better, right? Abolition of private property. We're seeing that now more than ever before. And where you're seeing it more is home ownership. Nobody can buy a house anymore. The 10-year bond, folks, last week hit that magic number of 5%. When I was going for my degree, I had to write a paper on the national debt. It was one of the things I had to do. And I don't know why, because, you know, I guess because you're going after a business degree, it's one of those things. And so I went to the OECD, which is a UN organization, and went through their financial stuff and everything else. And I figured out that if throughout history, basically interest rates on average from the Great Depression to 2000 was roughly 6 to 7%. And then we went on this huge debt binge after 9/11. And I mean, you've had spending before during the Reagan administration, the build up to the 600 ship fleet, the whole nine. A lot of debt.
Oh, after 9/11, it just
nothing near, right? It just skyrocketed.
Right.
Went totally vertical. And then we've had all this other spending. Basically, we have just pulled out the stops since 2001. And when I wrote that paper, the government debt was about $20 trillion. And if the interest on 10-year bonds hit 5% and stayed there enough to where these, as it rolls over, they're having to take this 0% debt and turn it into 5% interest. It would take 90% of the interest, 90% of the income tax to pay for the national debt, just the interest. Now we're at $36 trillion. And interestingly enough, the price on a 10-year bond just hit $5, or 5%, I should say. That's pretty damn catastrophic in terms of our current monetary system. And when that happens, not only do you have what they say is a shortage of houses, which I think it's more of, there's not so much a shortage of houses as much as there is retirement funds and non-families or individuals buying the house. And instead, it's banks and investment companies that are scooping up all these houses and then jacking up the prices and renting them out. I think that's the root cause.
Yeah, it's not actually people that are buying these houses to live in them. It's these.
That's correct.
It's these companies that are coming in, like BlackRock and stuff.
Yeah, and then they jack it up. Buying it up, and they need more money, more money, right? So you're seeing the abolition of private property really happen, because one of the things that I think is going to end up coming out is you're going to have government housing, and everybody's going to be assigned housing, almost akin to like 1984. You know, I can see a pathway to that.
It'd be like HUD on steroids
as one of the alternatives. I hope not, but you know, it's not looking good. Then you get to number 3, abolition of inheritance. Abolition of inheritance. You see the inheritance tax that the left always likes to push, because in a communistic society you don't have inheritance. It's all state property, and so if you don't have private property, you don't have inheritance. It's gone. You know, then you have abolition of patriotism. One of the biggest misnomers and misunderstandings about communism is that people who are adamant about communism are almost patriotic about it. No, that's not how it is.
No.
Communism is competitive to an unbelievable degree. It's cutthroat. It's down and dirty, because it's a very, very, very small oligarchy that runs the entire thing.
Why do you think communist leaders are always looking over their shoulder and worried about being cooed all the time? Because
no matter where you go.
No matter where you go. Yes, exactly.
That's right. Yep. It's always like that. Then abolition of the family. You can go ahead and look at the birth rates of the first world, and it's abysmal. We have populations collapsing all over the world. You have governments begging people to have kids while they have destroyed the family unit. You know, for decades, they have said, no, mom and dad are not the responsible people for children. The government is. You know, we want the government to raise the kids.
Right, and they've demoralized the population and made it sound like that having a family is dirty and bad, and that it's this archaic sort of thing that no longer is relevant anymore, and that, you know, they've completely destroyed like the nuclear family and the family unit, and it's what do you think, John?
Meanwhile, my neighbor's cows down here farting is destroying the climate. Me having a gas stove is destroying the climate. Me having 3 kids is destroying the climate. All the while, the elite are jet setting all over the world in their private jets and having 5, 6, 7, 8 or more kids, not caring about the climate.
Right.
This climate change, that's crap.
It's a scam. It's a scam. If it was that important, the whole world would be doing it. The whole world would be doing it, and we would be moving forward. And we've seen that time and time again.
Don't do what I do as I say.
Right.
Right.
And finally, you know, you have the abolition of religion and the creation of a world government, which you see that happening too. You have, and I am by no means a fan of organized religion. But I will tell you that being spiritual and having a moral compass is really important as you move on in the world. You don't necessarily have to subscribe to organized religion, but you
Well,
gotta have your head screwed on to a point where
they
you have a value system.
well, they know that they have no power over the Almighty, right?
That's right.
So they want to convince people that there is no Almighty and that the Almighty is them. They want people to worship the government as if the government is God, and you know, the worshiping the government becomes the new religion. And you've actually seen this manifested with all of this, you know, really, really crazy radical sort of kind of like that real radical left-wing ideology where they refuse to listen to any sort of reason. You can't have a dialogue with somebody, and they will not change their position no matter how much evidence you present to them, and no matter what you say. And you know who else acts just like that? Religious fundamentalists.
Absolutely.
You cannot rationalize and convince a religious fundamentalist to change their view on anything. And it's the same way with these you know I'm just gonna call them fundamentalists on the left. You're never gonna convince them that you know there's only two genders, a male and a female. They will die on that hill, and they will fight that with fundamental fervor. And so, no, I see no difference between them and a radical religious fundamentalist group. And they act the same way. You know, they're just replacing one form of fundamentalism with another form of fundamentalism, and then trying to claim, well, we're not fundamentalists, right? And
That's right.
Yeah. So it's crazy, man.
And so, like, let's take this fire for example as a great example of the Hegelian dialectic. Okay, 9/11, a great example of the Hegelian dialectic. So George W.F. Hegel in 1821, he formulated that exact thing, the process by which Illuminati objectives are achieved. See, according to the Hegelian dialectic, it says thesis plus antithesis equals synthesis. In other words, first you foment a crisis. Well, you know, let's not clean up the forests. Let's not clean up the brush. Let's not take or lower the risk of wildfires. Let's defund the fire departments. Let's make sure that reservoir gets serviced the way it's supposed to.
Just keep jacking up the liability on all of this, right?
On all the insurance, right? Okay, and then there's an enormous public outcry that something has to be done about the problem. So you offer a solution that brings about the changes you really wanted all along, but which people would have been unwilling to accept initially. Right? So smart cities. A lot of people don't like the ideas of smart cities, of being tracked the way they are, and all of their no privacy. Remember, Kev Baker used to talk about Glasgow all the time, and how there's at least like 45 cameras on you at any given time. Been that way for a long time. It's a smart city.
Glasgow was like the first prototype smart city. I think they were the first ones to adopt it. So they're like real deep in it now, I'm assuming.
There's videos all over the internet to just show how extreme a smart city can get. If you take a look at the plans for Neom over in Saudi Arabia, it's incredibly invasive. Basically, every part of your life is managed by artificial intelligence. And a lot of people don't like going along with that. But say you have a fire. Say you have a fire that destroys everything in one of the largest cities in America. Oh, let's just say that coincidentally, 40% of the businesses and people in that city couldn't renew their fire coverage this year. And then say that the government had to intervene to go ahead and rebuild it. And they do. And they utilize all the latest cutting edge technology that a smart city infrastructure would need.
Right. I mean, how much you want to bet? They're going to come out and announce this, and we're going to build Malibu and the Palisades back, bigger and better, and it's going to be greener, and it's going to have all of the, yeah, they're going to adopt this whole smart city, new green initiative thing, and that's what's going to be implemented.
And that's why the next quote is so important, because it was Mayor Amschel Rothschild himself who was the financing. He provided the financing for the Illuminati, but he said this. He says, "Allow me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who writes the laws." Because all the laws and all the congressmen and all the bureaucrats don't matter when you control the purse strings. Like it or not, Musk showed it firsthand. He went in and he basically bankrolled the Trump candidacy right into the White House. And now he's trying to do it over in England. And he'll do it in any other place that he can have influence. It's no different than, let me say this. Say I go ahead and I win $100 million in the lottery. And I go and I strategically purchase radio stations in some of the biggest population centers. Now, I know that radio is kind of archaic and you're not going to make a lot of money on it, but I have enough money to where I can live and try to better the world through putting people on the air with similar viewpoints to what I have. You're telling me that anybody out there wouldn't do that or something similar to that if they had the opportunity? Of course you would. And not everybody's going to agree with me, but
right.
It doesn't matter. They don't have to agree with me. See, because I'm an individual. In America, everybody's a king and a queen. Or so it's supposed to be, but that's not how it really is. So the bankers are the ones that control it. We know that from... Unless
you're Johnny King, then you're a king all the time.
Unless you're Johnny King. So communists, right? Communists. Here's the guy, right? Karl Marx, a.k.a. Moses Mordecai Marx Levi.
Oh, and after you get done talking about our boy Marx here, I pulled up a little information on our mayor that people might want to.
Okay, perfect. Because
this ties in perfectly.
Exactly. So I want everybody to notice this name right here. Very interesting. If you take a look at the nationality of that certain individual, a lot of people make a lot of stink about people with that kind of name there. And, some of the shenanigans they pull in the world. And Karl Marx was one of those people, to the point where he had to change his name because that name might evoke some, shall we say, ill will and issues.
Ill will.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he wrote the Communist Manifesto, of course, and he was part of the League of the Just, which is an Illuminati front, which you can go ahead and look up. It is that's a messed up organization, let me tell you that. But he not only advocated economic and political changes, it says, he advocates moral and spiritual changes. He believes the family should be abolished and that all children should be raised by a central authority. He expresses his attitude towards God by saying, quote, "We must war against all prevailing ideas of religion, of the state, of country, of patriotism. The idea of God is the keynote of a perverted civilization. It must be destroyed." Allah, the government is your God. When people are desperate, you must go to the government, Scotty.
Marx really, really loved the Adam Weishaupt blueprint, and I mean he was very pretty much just one for one inspired by it, and I mean you could see it right there. I mean obviously he's pretty lockstep with with the goals of the Bavarian Illuminati. So, I decided while you were discussing all of this to pull a little more information up on our mayor of L.A. here, because I had heard that she had quite the past, revolutionary past back in the 70s, and so, this is this is what I found out. It says Karen Bass, the current mayor of Los Angeles, has a history of visiting Cuba during the rule of Fidel Castro. In 1973, she traveled to Cuba as part of the Venceremos Brigade, a group that organized annual trips for young leftist Americans to the island. During her visits, she participated in construction work and cultural activities and attended speeches by Fidel himself, describing him as charismatic. She said Bass's involvement with the Venceremos Brigade has been part of a subject of controversy, obviously, because the Venceremos Brigade has been described by some as a Marxist training program that aimed to radicalize young American leftists in guerrilla warfare and terrorist tactics.
Oh boy! Now
Wow.
that sounds like an excellent use of your time. I mean,
according to a Los Angeles police investigator who infiltrated the group, members had to be confirmed as Marxists and Leninists before advancing higher in the ranks. Karen Bass visited Cuba frequently, sometimes every 6 months, and has been associated with the brigade since the 70s and the 80s. So there you go. There's your
wow. I mean, I'm just
Los Angeles.
I'm blown away. I'm totally surprised. I think I'll have a heart attack and die from that surprise. Johnny King, well, it's been good to have you. I know you got to run. I know that everybody has enjoyed the Johnny that we all enjoy, and I sure hope you come back real soon, buddy.
Yes, sir. I'll come back soon, guys. It's been a pleasure to come on and talk with you again, and it's been really fun.
It sure has. I'll see you later, buddy. Okay, so there he goes, the great Johnny King, the human hedgehog. I bet you guys don't. Oh yeah.
He's a deep. Joe pulled one from the deep lore. Like he said, this was way back in the day.
Oh yeah, Johnny King was one of the goats of independent media. Oh yeah, many years ago we started the Freedom Link, and we're still doing it after all these years. And it's funny because you get to see the gradual degradation. And it never ends up being as fast as you want it to be, or as you think it should be, but oh boy, it's been a slow death. So that
when we've been shouting this stuff for how many years, and to just see it slow, it's like watching the car crash in slow motion, right? And you know what's gonna happen. You see the car sliding, and you're like, oh man, yeah, now it's gonna roll. Somebody's getting thrown out the window. It's
and that brings us to our next stop on this timeline. This walk through time. People of power, in their own words, telling us who and what and when and why all of this is happening or is going to happen. And here is another one. And of course, Albert Pike, he's got a statue outside the National Archives that you could go see. Albert Pike. Now, this guy, of course, was one of the big, like the head of the Water Buffaloes or whatever, the Masonic Lodge. Actually, he was, I want to say like they had 32nd degree, and then he was like way above that. Like they made a special rank for him. That's how special he was. So he issues instructions on July 14th, 1889 to the 23 Supreme Councils of the world on July 14th, 1889. He reveals who the true object of Masonic worship really is. And he says, to you, sovereign grand instructor generals, we say this, that you may repeat it to all the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees, those that don't get the cheap drinks at the bar, The Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees, not the low guys, right? Not the guys that ride around on the go-karts in the parades and all that stuff. No, not them. These are the high guys, the control freaks, that the Masonic religion should be, by all of us initiates of high degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Because that's really what it's all about.
Nice.
Right?
Right.
And then even Cecil Rhodes, Now here's a guy a very interesting fella. Okay, control freak. But boy, oh boy, he was like a truther control freak. It was like it's a weird dynamic where he's got the evil control freak side, but then he's got a relationship with like the Chitauri and all these other things. And
well, it's because a lot of the it's the same. It's the same sort of where they know that there's like esoteric power, right? And
yeah, right.
And right, and so they
and
want
ley
to
lines
try,
and things like that.
Yeah, and so they know that there's like power in a lot of the stuff that like the Eastern religions talk about,
Right.
and things like that. It's the reason why like Hitler sent out the special units to go and find artifacts and things like that. They get into like those weird esoteric things, and so yeah.
So he, being the Prime Minister of South Africa, and of course that being a British colony, he's able to exploit and control the gold and the diamond wealth in South Africa, and he works to bring all the habitable portions of the world under the domination of the ruling elite. So he's using the resources to be able to do that. And he creates the Rhodes Scholarship to basically do what J.P. Morgan did in the United States right around the same time. So Rhodes is doing that on a more global scale, trying to take people in that are basically what he considers talented enough, smart enough, and willing to do the dirty work, and then being placed strategically in different
areas. Trying to build. He's trying to build his Avengers team of global sort of
people that'll do his bidding in high places. So he does that. At the same time, J.P. Morgan is doing the exact same thing over in the United States, where he's buying up or teaching all of these people in school, paying for their scholarships, and then putting them into the media. And then he's strategically buying the newspapers and the media entities that feed the stories to the newspapers, to the local
you got to get
ones.
your people into the positions of power where they're effective in being able to, sway the.
There's been a lot of people that compare what Musk is doing to what J.P. Morgan was doing at that time.
In a way, it kind of is.
I mean, from a strategy standpoint, it is.
Right. I mean,
but
what are the goals? Or the goal, the goals, are they different? Are what are the intentions behind it? Because
so we can study that though,
right?
And we can say that okay. So if we look at the behavior of J.P. Morgan, he was looking to control the information stream. Okay. You could make the same argument about that with X. However, X lets the community police itself. So you could say anything you want, put it out there, as long as it doesn't do violate the few rules that are out there. But in the long run, you can basically say what you want, it being a public square, and then people will call you on the carpet if you're mistaken, or maybe there's a different version of things or whatever. But it makes it more of an honest type of format. J.P. Morgan wasn't trying to do that.
Right. So it's a question of, is this Elon using his influence and money and power, is it for benevolent purposes or is it for malevolent purposes, right? And that's the question, right? And we know that J.P. Morgan obviously was malevolent because it was
plus we have history now,
right? And history and all of that, and because look, I mean, all throughout history there have been examples of benevolent rulers and benevolent, they still held the status of a king or whatever, but they actually cared about their people and whatnot. It's not like every single person of power and influence is a bad person. Unfortunately more times than not they are, because in those levels of leadership and power, you have a higher percentage of psychopaths that manage to work their way up in that.
If you will, though, but George Washington.
But you can't paint everybody with a broad brush.
No, but imagine being in his shoes.
Right.
I mean, seriously, put yourself in George Washington's shoes. Here he is. He's the first one to be part of like a whole new way of things, right? Like, and everybody's having to struggle. What are we going to call this guy?
He had the opportunity to be a king.
To be a benevolent dictator, right?
To be a benevolent king, yeah.
Okay, and then fast forward a little bit. So Washington struggles with it, doesn't want any part of that kind of scheme. Basically says, look, guys, I'm just trying to get us set on the right road, and then I'm out of here. I'm getting too old for this shit. So he does 8 years. He's out. There's no limits at that time and how many terms a president could have, or do. He's 2 terms. I've had it, man. I'm done. Time to pass the torch. Now, fast forward. McCormick-Dickstein Committee, early 1930s. You have the Money Trust, the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all of these banking families, the Guggenheims, the Fords, the endowments. And they go and they say, I don't like what this guy FDR is doing. He's supposed to be one of us. He comes from a prominent banking family. What the hell is this guy doing? Now he wants to pack the Supreme Court to get this communist shit through. All these programs and CCC, TVA, all this crap. No, we're not going to have this. He's destroying our ability to control things. He's putting more money in their pockets and at the same time turning us into like a socialist state. No, we can't have that. So they go and they ask Smedley Butler, the most decorated general in Marine Corps history, winner of 2 Medals of Honor, and also the de facto leader of the bonus army after World War I, when the vets marched on Washington to demand their bonus early because of how much they were suffering and got told to pack sand. And then MacArthur goes in and lights their shelters on fire and opens fire with tanks and everything else. It was a travesty, but the whole idea was to install a benevolent dictator that could connect with the people, but be controlled. And they thought Smedley Butler was that guy. Ends up being, he's not that guy. Ends up being, I'm pissed off at you MFers for sending me over to China to protect Standard Oil.
And look, I'm gonna have a hot take here. Some people might disagree with me or whatever.
Go ahead.
But I'll go ahead and throw another example out as a benevolent leader. After the 1980s, I would say Gaddafi was a benevolent leader of Libya. He pretty much just focused.
Dangerous territory there, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm said it's going to be a hot take, but I will say that I believe that Gaddafi actually cared about the people of his country, right? He cared about the Libyans. He built up infrastructure. He was actually working on trying to establish an entirely new currency for the entire continent of Africa.
Can't have
right?
that.
Right. And he had like big plans, and let me just ask everyone a question. Is Libya better off now than it was under Gaddafi?
I guess that's some homework. That's some homework for the people that watch this podcast.
Yeah. Just go and look at the state of Libya right now compared to what it was like when.
And that's by no means saying that Gaddafi was a perfect dude. No.
Especially he was doing
some
crazy stuff.
Yeah, he was effed up.
Notice I said after the 80s because he had this sort of change.
Yeah, he did.
Like
a come to Jesus moment.
Yeah, so let me make this clear to everyone. Look, Reagan put a missile through his window in the 80s. He had he wasn't at home, luckily I guess for Gaddafi, but a laser guided missile flew through his window and blew his stuff up. And then after that he sort of had oh crap, let me reassess my entire kind of situation and thought process on things. And he sort of had I guess you could say spiritual reawakening or whatever, a complete change in the way he operated. And so I want to make that clear. After the 80s, Gaddafi became this kind of benevolent leader, and
but even
just
then,
focused on his people.
In the 70s and all, he had his framework there. The problem was he was young.
Right.
He was young.
Right.
Okay. And he had the hormones and everything going. He was juiced up. So,
and look, and regardless what Hillary pulled in Libya was an absolute
travesty. Yeah.
And the way
proportions.
it was ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yep. So there's my hot take of the show.
So they can happen. they can happen, and they do exist. However,
it's very rare.
You get what you get.
Very rare.
A lot of people are looking at Trump as that kind of person.
Benevolent.
And quite frankly, I mean, one could make the case or the argument for it. As a matter of fact, I think it was a guy, Adam Kokesh. So when he ran for president, and I think it was a few cycles ago, his whole intent was to just get in there long enough to disband or do away with the corporation of the United States and then just walk away. And then, okay, guys, let's pick up the pieces after that. I'm not sure it would just be that easy because there's too much really at stake and not enough brain power, I don't think, left to be able to figure out what to do if that happened. And the other thing, too, you have to understand is that people would have to respect you and respect the fact that you just did that. They don't have to. They could just say, who cares? You did that. See ya, next. And you're done. And we're back to business as usual. So it's kind of a flawed plan. I get the intent, but it's kind of like the sovereign citizen thing. Well-intentioned, okay? Definitely and probably right as far as the law is concerned, but unfortunately you lack the army that it takes to gain the respect to not carry a license or have a license plate on your car. You will get arrested, and they will violate you.
Look, it's true what they say. There's power in numbers, and if you don't have the numbers,
that's right,
you're not going to have the power.
You better have something to back you up. That's all I'm saying.
Right. There's you can scream and shout into the wind all you want about,
and I'm totally there with them. I mean, I love it.
Yes, exactly.
It's great.
Love it too.
I would love to see it.
I'm all about it, but you have to be pragmatic and rational enough to realize that it's not going to work, though. It just doesn't work.
It just doesn't work that way.
Until you have at least, like, I don't know, what would you say?
Like Musk's money and Musk's satellite network and
I'm
Musk's
about,
infrastructure.
Like, what percentage of the population would have to get on board and go, you know what, we're all going to become sovereign citizens, and we're going to go with the sovereign citizen thing, and then at what point do you think it becomes a tip? So you can do it, and it's a good thought exercise. And
do you think in our lifetime we're going to see basically the dissolution of the United States and a breakup into more regional powers or whatever, like the states become sovereign?
I think we've slowly been seeing that take place. I think we've been on this track for a while, and I think that's eventually what's going to have to happen. I think that's probably how things will eventually play out, is that once because we can't sustain this, right? This is a completely unsustainable, and Trump's whatever, they're going to try their best to keep the boat afloat as long as possible.
I just thought of something. I just finish your thought, but I just thought of something. This is
but they're I mean, if you were to see, look.
Think about this.
I'm gonna look. Right now, there's a lot of things running through my head that are like paralleling the comparison to the way the Soviet Union collapsed, right? And
so in that regard, think about this for a second. The Soviet Union wasn't sitting on, I want to say something like $68 trillion in retirement funds.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And Trump's up against a wall, right? Let's just say the debt ceiling doesn't increase. Do you think people would trust him if he said, look, guys, Congress isn't playing ball and I need your help. So what if I give you treasuries and you make 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever it is, but I'm going to take your money if you're below a certain age and give you treasuries in return. F the national debt. We're going to do this ourselves. What do you think? Outrage? Do you think he pulls it off? Because we saw Cyprus. Cyprus's banking system was going to collapse, and they went and bailed it in. And I just don't see a way around it.
You would have to probably depend on the people's ignorance on treasuries and the economy, and they wouldn't understand, like...
Not most people, no. But I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like most people, they're not like economically savvy on treasuries and what that is, and the nuances of all of that. And so I honestly think, yeah, probably he could convince a lot of people.
I'm just saying he would be the guy. But he would be the guy. I don't know why, but I mean, it's just one of those things I'm floating out there. Don't be surprised.
Back to your question of do we break up into regional areas? And
yeah,
I would probably say yeah. I mean, we're already seeing just such a huge disconnect between like Middle America, California, the coasts and the middle of the country. They are pretty much at this point diametrically opposed on all sort of ideological levels and whatever. There's a disconnect there. And so if something like that was to happen, like, okay, let's say California, for all intents and purposes, it's a failed state already. We're talking about a failed state. Do you just decide, you know what, you guys go do you? Right? I mean, wasn't the whole point of the United States as a nation that every state was to be its own little experiment? Right? Every state was to be its own experiment in governance, and the states were allowed to kind of govern their own way, and they were in a way their own little country, just with the federal government kind of overseeing all
and tying us all together and blah blah blah. Mutual defense, that kind of thing.
But they could experiment and have their own little experiments in their states, and one state could do things one way, and one state could do things the other way, and all that.
For the most part. They do, except when it comes to interstate commerce or things like that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, and I think that potentially, who knows when it will happen, if it ever happens. But if something like that was to happen, I think you would probably see some kind of a separation between the coasts and maybe like the more central areas of the United States, or at least these high population density areas, like these metropolitan areas that are always blue. They never turn red, and I don't know that maybe now because of
I think if it ever comes to that,
seeing it.
Whatever the largest country in the world is, or the most powerful, or a handful that are there and still intact, will come in and take it all, and then divvy
that's
it
the
up.
Time.
If I was G in China, if that happened, the United States collapsed. Go on, boys! Woo, we're going in.
Well, yeah. You know what? It would also kind of this is the parallel I was thinking about to the Soviet Union. Is you had the Soviet Union, right? The USSR, and they had all these Soviet bloc countries, right? That they had incorporated into the USSR, the USSR, the grand, and then when that collapsed, you saw all of these Soviet bloc countries becoming independent, right? They were breaking off, and I think it would be something like that, where it would just be like, okay, California is going to be independent now, or whatever.
That's great.
Or
Until
you
like,
have this western block of states that decide they're gonna,
I think it's interesting because of how desperate we are for resources in this world. And America's extremely rich in resources. And it's one of those things that I don't know if people could keep their hands off it, if you know what I mean. It's one of those things.
Right.
Now,
right. Oh, yeah.
I just don't see there being a happy ending in any sort of collapse of the United States. It's not in our best interest. I guess that's what I'm trying to get to. No matter what you do for a scenario, it can always be
it's
worse,
not gonna be
and it will be worse.
It's not going to be a good thing. I mean, there's no.
So all those people that wish that to happen, be careful what you wish for, because when you go to places where you've had that kind of collapse, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant at all.
It's like the idiots that are out there like, let's just kick off this civil war and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you don't want to kick that off. And you don't want to wish.
And let me tell you this too. So when I was in government communications, right, we also had to do like a lot of emergency planning for big cities and things like that. If that were ever to occur, the very first thing the government does, or the ruling government does, is they seal off the population centers. They lay siege to them. Yeah. Because that's 80% of your population. And they isolate you. You can't go in or out. Nothing goes in or out. And everybody kills each other until who you have left are willing slaves.
People seem to forget that, you know what, siege warfare is not something that is relegated to the medieval times. Siege warfare is something that is very effective, and it is used today. And like Joe said, yes, 80% of your population is in these metropolitan centers, and once you surround those metropolitan centers and you lay siege to it, it's over, man.
It's game over.
Game over.
Yeah, that people start to eat each other, all sorts of crap, until finally, they go in, and whoever's left, they're controlled. It's done. They've just been through the most terrible thing ever. If you don't think siege warfare is effective in the modern age, go look at what they did to Fallujah. Oh, it's unbelievable. That's why I'm saying that there's a romantic side to the whole thing, but there's a realistic side to the whole thing.
Yes.
And the realistic thing is you don't need armies of people to take over and control these population centers. You just need to isolate them, cut off the supplies and everything else, and you will have control. And you don't need a lot of people to do it. So those that think that it's impossible, it's not. As a matter of fact, there are plans for that in the event that something like that goes down. It's called continuity of government.
Yes, and people out there who there's people out there who think that they can take on the system without realizing how much they actually depend on the system. Right? It's a conflict of
very conflicting.
Yes, very conflicting because once you start going down that road, and then the system decides, okay, you're not part of the system anymore, then it's going to be very, very, very hard to
so Trump's
operate.
He's got a mess. There's no doubt about it, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And it'll be interesting to see how this LA thing pans out. It'll be interesting to see how Luigi pans out. There's so much going on. Oh, and I think tomorrow, the New Glenn rocket launches tomorrow. So we'll see if Bezos's rocket makes it into orbit.
That's the big boy, right? Isn't that the
New Glenn?
His big rocket? Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. But we're out of time, folks. Thank you for tuning in tonight, and all those watching on YouTube and everything else. Have a great week, and we'll see you all soon. Have a good night, everybody.
Adios.